saying they would happen because I was out of step with the crowd. The same thing is happening now in the wake of my revelations last month about the Russian organic robotoids. The conventional wisdom, of course, is that there just cannot be such things. Or at least, if they are possible, they must lie far in the future, not now. But my friends, the conventional wisdom is wrong, dead wrong. They are not only possible, but they are real, and they are walking among us right now. To those who are ignorant of the scientific advances that have taken place in the past 20 to 30 years, they sound incredible. But within a small select group of scientists, both in and out of government, here and abroad, the existence of robotoids is known. And certain of those who know and understand about them are faithful listeners to the Dr. Beter audio letter. As I mentioned in my introductory comments, those who seek to control us want to keep us all in a horse and buggy mentality. That way, we remain unaware of the forces we are confronting, and therefore more vulnerable. Ever since World War II began 4 decades ago, we Americans have been living with a shroud of secrecy in the military and scientific fields. As a result, most Americans today are actually living in the past without knowing it. But in my audio letters, I'm trying to bring you up to date with reality. For the past 4 years, I've been letting you in on developments which have taken decades to materialize in secret. Learning about all these things over such a short time span is like having the world itself change almost overnight. So it is little wonder that some of my listeners are getting a case of future shock from my audio letters. By the way, the term future shock is taken from the famous book titled Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. The book was published nearly 10 years ago in 1970 by Random House. Toffler defines future shock as, quote, the shattering stress and disorientation that we induce in individuals by subjecting them to too much change in too short a time, unquote. In his book, Toffler called attention to the fact that numerous rapid and drastic new developments are taking place today without people quite knowing how to cope with it all. Among these developments, Toffler discussed the revolutionary advances in biology and genetics. Quoting leading scientists in the field, he gave examples of astonishing things which are either possible now or will be soon. All of these are fascinating to read about, and many are frightening as well. In particular, several items point directly toward organic robotoids, although the book does not say so. As I explained last month, an organic robotoid is an artificial robot-like creature. It is a kind of biological machine with a biological computer brain. With this in mind, consider the words of Arne Tiselius, a biochemist and Nobel Prize winner. As quoted in Future Shock nearly a decade ago, he said, it is quite obvious that computers so far are just bad imitations of our brains. Once we learn more about how the brain acts, I would be surprised if we could not construct a sort of biological computer. Such a computer might have electronic components modeled after biological components in the real brain. And at some distant point in the future, it is conceivable that biological elements themselves might be parts of the machine, unquote. Dr. Tiselius was on the right track with these words of 10 years ago, but he was too conservative. At that time, the Russians were already on the threshold of their key breakthrough, which I referred to last month. That breakthrough had to do with the biological computer brain, which is the key to a successful robotoid. In a few moments, I'll tell you more about that. In other places, too, one can find many bits and pieces of information that point straight toward robotoids. But you will not often find this information on television or in the newspapers. Instead, it crops up here and there in specialized publications directed at particular audiences. An example of this is the book, The Dynamics of Change, published in 1967 by Prentice Hall, Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. The book is copyrighted by Kaiser Aluminum and Chemical Corporation, having first published all the material in 6 issues of Kaiser Aluminum News. The revolution in biology and genetics is only a very small part of the subject matter in the book. Even so, listen to just a few brief quotes. Under the heading Genetic Manipulation, quote, "The ability to control the formation of new beings may be one of the most basic developments of the future. Recent discoveries about the nucleic acids, the basic building blocks of life, have led to the belief that man may someday be able to treat genes in such a way that desired characteristics can be realized." Unquote. Under the heading Direct Education of Brain Cells, quote, "Experiments indicate that certain chemicals in the brain will, when implanted in another brain, transfer knowledge." Unquote. Under the heading Man-Machine Symbiosis, quote, "Computers exist which can learn, remember, see, seek goals, reason, walk, sing on key, talk, be irritable, play games, grasp, adapt to an environment, and even design improvements in themselves." Unquote. My friends, remember, these things were published for public consumption and a dozen years ago. Further, under the same heading, quote, "Man-like computers may one day contain plasma, circulating through a visceral-like envelope, allowing them to be self-healing." Unquote. Finally, under the heading Human Robots, quote, "An electronic circuit that imitates 2 neurons. The cells of the human brain has been built and has enabled a robot to deal with some unexpected situations. But the neuron structure was bulky. The brain has billions of neurons, meaning an incredible miniaturization job will be necessary before truly human robots are developed." Unquote. Since those words were written, of course, incredible things have been done in miniaturizing electronic computers. For example, a mere dozen years ago, there was no such thing as an electronic hand calculator. Within a few years, they were on the market, but at a cost of hundreds of dollars. Today, just a few scant years further on, they are all over the place, tiny, inexpensive, and able to do things only bulky computers could do a decade ago. But these things only hint very vaguely at the scientific strides that have made organic robotoids a reality. A man-made biological machine, known as a robotoid, is remarkable from head to foot. But the most astonishing thing about them is their ability to simulate human beings, not just in appearance, but in behavior. In other words, the most crucial and most amazing thing about a Russian organic robotoid is its biological computer brain. The developments that were destined to lead to Russia's breakthrough in robotoid brain research began 32 years ago, in 1947. In that year, a Hungarian-born physicist, Dr. Denis Gabor, conceived of a way to make 3-dimensional photographs called holograms. It was a revolutionary scientific discovery, and it was destined to lead to the Nobel Prize for Dr. Gabor. He did not receive the prize until 24 years later, in 1971. By then, the holograms were a reality in numerous laboratories worldwide. And yet, most members of the general public still had not heard of holography. And even today, more than 3 decades after Dr. Gabor's original discovery, holography is still unfamiliar to the public as a whole. In 1947, Dr. Gabor's theory pointed the way toward holography. But at that time, holograms could not actually be made. What was needed in order to make them was something called monochromatic light. That is, light of just one wavelength. No one knew how to create that kind of light in 1947. But in 1960, the situation suddenly changed. That was the year the laser was invented. When lasers are discussed in public, attention is usually focused on just one of their amazing characteristics. That's the ability of a laser to produce a narrow, intense beam of light. The beam can travel great distances without spreading out and diffusing. Lasers pointed the way toward energy beam weapons, among other things, And as I revealed long ago in audio letter 26, this is what secretly spawned America's crash program to get to the moon in 1961. But the reason laser beams behave the way they do is that the light they produce is monochromatic. So they are made to order for generating holograms.